Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome back to the High Performance Zone. Today, I have Rabbi Steve Leder, who's one of the most renowned rabbis in the world. And we talk about everything from hugs to death. This is one of the most meaningful interviews I've ever done. Please dive in. You're going to enjoy this. His new book out talks about how our greatest fear becomes our greatest gift, and that greatest fear being death itself. So how do we use death as a path for living? And we also want to make sure we get 100 blessings a day. We talk about that, and we end with I will be what I will be. That is the God I am statement. So with that, let's dive in. Gucci, really enjoyed this. Glad to be here. Here we go. Hey everybody, I am with Rabbi Steve Leder, and this is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. It's truly a blessing, Rabbi, to have you here. We're going to go deep, but first off, I just want to start with glad to be here. Grateful to have you.
Thank you. I am really, really honored to be with you today, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Let's have at it.
Let's go for it. You know, there's so many parallels between some of the things that I've had the chance to do and what you teach and have studied for so much. One of the things that caught my attention right away as I was doing my research is a statement you made that success really doesn't teach us much. What did you mean by that?
Success tends to put us on a kind of treadmill where we just keep repeating the same behavior over and over and over again. And we don't often see the collateral damage of the success. Right? So for example, the workaholic is rewarded for being a workaholic, which can divert your attention from the collateral damage of that workaholism. What is it doing to your family? What is it doing to your marriage? What is it doing to your health? How are you managing to be the anxiety of being in that high wire act, right? So success can really divert your attention from collateral damage, number one. Number two, we don't really learn anything from success, right? It's not disruptive. It's really only disruption that teaches us something. I'll give you this is a great insight. I wish it was mine. Marshall McLuhan, Canadian philosopher. He said, I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't the fish.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Because a fish is born in water, lives in water, dies in water. And in a sense, the fish has no perspective on its own life.
Exactly.
Now, when does a fish discover water?
When it's hurting. Yeah, right. It's out.
When it's jerked out of the water and it's wriggling on the end of a hook, gasping for air. That's when a fish discovers water. Okay, that's when a fish develops some perspective on its own existence. And this is what pain and failure do for us. Now, is it worth it? I'm not here to tell you, John, that failure is always worth it, that loss is always worth what we learn from it. I'm merely saying that neither is it worth less. Okay?
Yes.
There's meaning in it. There's power in it. It is a great teacher. Pain and failure are great teachers. In fact, probably, in my view, the only teachers.
Wow. Let's dive in this, because here's what's going through my mind. You know, as you know, my background was a Navy fighter pilot, and we flew with the Blue Angels. And one of the biggest kind of cultural parts of being a Blue Angel is you're constantly trying to improve. It's continuous improvement. And we have this debrief process where we focus on every little minute thing that went wrong. And because we're trying to figure it out so that we assume accountability, number one, for ourselves. And then two, as a team, how can we solve this to get better? So it's very interesting. Top Gun and the Blue Angels would totally agree with you right now.
Yeah. And it's a way of reframing a failure.
Yes. Beautiful.
As something other than, this is a phrase we often use, total failure.
Yeah.
If you reframe it properly, there can be no such thing as a total failure. There can be no such thing as a total loss. If out of it you become a better human being or live in some way a more beautiful life.
Yeah, I love the idea of reframing. I just did a quick impact video on what I call the Gucci flip. By the way, Gucci's my call sign. I know right now we're at Rabbi. We're going to get to Steve. We're going to get to your new call sign, Leader, right?
Yeah.
But
There's a big movie coming out about Gucci now too with Lady Gaga. So you're going to be super famous, dude.
That's right, but I'm not sure it's a positive one. We'll
No,
see.
it's not.
Yeah, I know. So I'm not sure
No.
I
Yeah.
want to be associated. But it is funny. Speaking of call signs, you don't get to pick them, right? And usually if you like them, they don't stick. So bottom line was, I wore a thin black leather tie once back in the 80s. It wasn't even cool then, right? And my teammates looked at me. They go, "What is that? That's Gucci." And no fighter pilot wants to be called Gucci, right? So so it's stuck. But it is ironic that now it's cool. You know, it's definitely supposedly cool out there. Hey, but back to what we're talking about, because I think it's really critical. How do you flip something? How do you reframe something? And that was actually what you were talking about, is something we did with every one of those mistakes. If it was out of parameters, we called them a safety. We just admitted it and we moved on. And we said, what's the root cause? And let's move on. And in fact, that's where the learning came from. And I think that's where you're going with, right? We learned not from what was going well, even though we wanted to acknowledge it and reinforce it, but we spent the time learning from what didn't go well and how we could get better.
Yeah, and the collateral of life is in our failures, not in our successes.
So let's talk. Yeah, go. No, I want to go beyond the Blue Angels. I want to go into life, because that's where you're in the wisdom, the compassion, you know, empathy, some of these bigger tools. I know you got a new book that just came out, and I got to tell you, I can't wait to dive into this. But the beauty of what remains. But here's what I really love is the subtitle: How Our Greatest Fears Become Our Greatest Gift. Let's talk about that. How do you turn fear into a gift?
Well, let's start with the most universal of all human fears. What are most people, I would say all people at certain points in life, what are we all afraid of? What is all of religion a response to? Death.
Well, death, right? Death. Correct. And failure.
Why were you correcting those tiny mistakes as a Navy fighter pilot?
Yeah.
You didn't want to die.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? At the end of the day, that's the bottom line, right? Death is the great existential and literal human fear. Now, how do we take the fact that we are going to die, that great fear, and use it somehow to ennoble our lives, to bring greater meaning, gratitude, value to life? You know, Kafka said the meaning of life is that it ends.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful idea, right? Imagine for a moment a deathless life. What would that be? What it would be something other than human, right?
Right. For sure.
No one, we would all be fatalists. No one would be inspired to change or create or do anything. No one would get married. No one would have children. No one would have ambition. It's sort of like, I'm going to badly paraphrase the poet Wallace Stevens. He said, the beauty of a flower is that it fades. Right? Now, why isn't anyone moved? Well, let me ask you, do you like plastic flowers, John?
Not really. No, but I love real flowers. Right. In fact, fuchsia, I don't know, but that color red fuchsia, you know, those, I love, it's something just connects with me anytime I see that, but go for it.
Why does no one care about plastic flowers? Because they have no death. They have no life. They have no meaning. They have no real purpose. They don't move us, right? So, and I am not for a moment trying to say that loss and death aren't painful, anxiety provoking, but they are also, death is also this great fear that makes our lives meaningful and beautiful. And also, this is why I called the book The Beauty of What Remains. Death also strips away the fact that we're going to die. Death itself, it strips away so much nonsense from our lives. And what it leaves behind is beautiful. You know, I'll give you a simple example. Theologians call this via negationis. It's a way of thinking about God. We can figure out what God is via negationis, by way of the negative, by deciding what God is not, right?
Okay, got it.
All right, so think of us like a sculpture, okay? Think of the most beautiful marble sculpture you've ever seen in your life. Now, that beautiful marble sculpture began as a complete block of marble.
Yeah.
That beauty that was always there within
Yes.
was created by taking away.
That's beautiful. You know, real quick, because what goes through my mind is Michelangelo, which is, you know, what you're quoting. And I happened to be in Florence with my wife a couple of years ago, and we got to see the statue, you know.
Yeah, you saw the David.
The David, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was awe-inspiring. And I love where you're headed is that was just a block of marble at one point.
That's right. And it was created by skillfully removing.
Right.
Not by adding. And death removes in a way.
Yeah.
It's painful. It is sad. But it also, chip by chip, helps define what's meaningful in life, what's beautiful in life, what's valuable in life. Yeah. And that's a way of thinking about it. COVID, I think, did this for us. You know,
I was going to say it brought a lot of chances to appreciate what's important, right?
That's right. What did COVID teach us? It taught us, first of all, how vulnerable we all are.
Yep.
You know, because we're all like that fish in the water with this sense of invulnerability.
Right.
It taught us.
By the way, in fighter pilots, we call that bulletproof. Yeah, and you don't want to be bulletproof. There's a thin line between confidence and you arrogance. Definitely, totally not. But
you know, you're not bulletproof.
No.
Right. So I think COVID pierced our sense of invulnerability.
Yeah.
It taught us, look, I am only now speaking about people who had a roof over their heads and food in their refrigerator and could pay their bills. Right. For many people, there's nothing good to say about COVID. And I know that. We all know that.
Right.
But for many of us, it revealed some truths we had forgotten. A lot of us are standing knee deep in a river and we're just dying of thirst, you know? Yeah. We forgot that it's who we have, not what we have, that matters. Right. We forgot that no matter how many times we say, I love you, and are held and hold the people we love, no matter how many times, it's not enough. It's never enough. You know, I don't know about you, John, but during COVID, I found myself saying, I love you more freely, more openly, more, you know, more frequently, right?
Yeah.
Every call with my friends, I love you. You know,
I love you, and I love that you're going to the highest, you know, love, obviously. But I would even break it down to just being grateful. Be grateful for the small things, right? And that connection to people. You know, what's interesting, Rabbi, is you know, the speaking world has opened up again now. I'm starting to, I don't know about, you know, your temple and how you all handle and things, but I'm out there now in front of large audiences again. And it is so powerful to see the connection between people, that human connection that, we get some on this Zoom, but you know, it's not the same, right?
Oh,
what do you see?
First of all, on Zoom, it's very hard for me on Zoom to establish a new relationship with someone. Okay. Yep. It's fine when I'm dealing with someone that I have a lot of relationship collateral in the bank already with.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. But it's not very good for establishing new relationships. It is human touch.
Yeah.
Human touch. We need it. We crave it.
Hey, why is that hug? I'm a hugger. So, and I'll hug men too. I mean, it's not, I mean, I will hug everybody. And I got to tell you, when in my background, so my dad was a military, the military engineer, and he just, in his way of bringing, he wasn't a hugger as much as me, but as a little kid, I realized, hey, it's okay to hug your dad. In fact, kind of fun. And he changed, but go for it.
Let's break down a hug for a moment, because I actually have given this considerable thought.
Oh, nice.
What does it mean to approach someone to hug them, right? First of all, it says, my arms and my heart are open to you.
Yeah.
It also says, I have no weapon. I mean you no harm. I'm not going to stab you in the front. And when we wrap our arms around each other, I'm not going to stab you in the back. And you are approaching me with open arms and an open heart.
Yeah.
And you and I trust you that you are not going to stab me in the front or stab me in the back. And we trust, and we are affirming. We are de-objectifying and affirming the humanity of the other. And you know, John, evil is always the result of the objectification of the other, of failing to recognize and embrace the humanity of the other. And
yeah, I would say a misunderstanding, right? And an ignorance of the other, for sure.
Yeah. And a view that somehow that person is not a person like I am a person.
Well,
right?
Even the duality, that they're separate from us, right? Because we're so used to, even as I'm, looking at you on one side of my screen and me, but in reality, we are more interconnected than we are separate, right?
So Schopenhauer, the philosopher Schopenhauer, he asked this question. He said, how is it that one human being can run to the assistance of another human being at the risk of his or her own life?
Right.
How is that possible? What does that mean? And what he says is it is in that moment that you are affirming that the other is you.
Yes.
And you are the other. And we are one in some fundamental, elemental way. And that, now I would say this as a religious person, that is when we are closest to God. That is heaven on earth.
Let's
right?
even take it a step. I'm with you 100%, but here's what's going through my mind is why is there have to be a separation between God and us? In reality, right? Aren't we all one?
There's another German philosopher, Martin Buber, wrote a book called I and Thou, right?
Beautiful.
And that there are two kinds of relationships we have with other people, I, it, and I, thou. Now, I, it is a relationship that is transactional and involves objectification. Like, for example, the checkout person at the grocery store. They're just an extension of the cash register in most people's minds, right? They're just an it. It's a transactional objectification. It is when you fully recognize the humanity in the other. That's what Buber calls an I-thou relationship. Now, here's the tricky part about it, though. The moment you say to yourself, we're having an I-thou connection, it's over.
Oh, because you're conscious of the separation.
Yeah, you've killed it. So, like Wordsworth was talking, I think it was Wordsworth he was talking about literary critics. He said they murder to dissect. In order to dissect something, you kill it.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the tricky thing is like the moment you realize, oh, John and I are really connected, right? The minute I say that, it's over.
Yep.
Right? So it's a challenge. It is, in my view, the religious challenge. This is the most profound of all religious ideas, that all is one. This is the difference between religion and paganism, because paganism viewed life as being sustained through conflict, the dichotomous tension of multiple gods, the war god and the peace god, the sun god and the moon god, the water god and the desert god, right? It was always through conflict.
Yeah.
But the monotheistic, concept is just the opposite. No, 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 no.
Oneness.
There is a single unifying principle to all of existence, which makes death a part of life every bit as much as birth is a part of life, right? All human beings are 99.8% genetically identical.
Oh, is it 99.8? I had heard
Yes.
99.9. I want to make
Well,
sure I got it right.
I have heard both, so I always round down to be safe.
Yeah, I got you. That's
Okay?
good.
But think about that for a moment.
Crazy.
We don't behave that way.
No.
Imagine if we did.
Yeah.
So this is, COVID, I think, taught a lot of us how genetically identical we actually are, right? We're all vulnerable.
Yep.
And I don't know your feelings about the vaccine. I think it's a freaking miracle.
I do too. Yeah.
It works just as well on all of us, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what color, what age, what gender, what preference, none of it, right? So I think COVID really, really, now, of course, what's the challenge? You read my mind now, John. What is the challenge coming out of the cave, coming out of COVID?
Well, let's not go back to the old way, right?
Exactly.
I call it the new, by the way. I was having this conversation with the head of Mayo's all regenerative medicine, and so, you think about, that's why I love having this conversation with you, someone who understands deeply, spirituality, life. And he understood deeply this idea of regeneration. They're making hearts now. They're able to regenerate, heart cells.
Yeah,
But
stem cell is amazing.
It's beautiful. And we can get into the theoretical behind it or the religious piece. But the part that I love is that he said, we're not going to go, we were talking about this question, what's going to be like post-COVID? And I threw out the word a new normal. And he goes, well, John, I wouldn't call it that. He says, because in my world, normal means homo sapiens.
Right.
And he says, it's
Right.
not going to be that. It's going to be a new.
Right.
So how do you take that?
So let's talk about it in biological terms, because I think there are religious analogies, because it's all the same. A lot of people, when they say God, mean science, and a lot of people, when they say science, mean God. The word God is a word that it makes a lot of us uncomfortable to use it because of what other people associate with that word that we do not.
Let's dive into Yowie, right? I'm not sure I said it right, but in the Jewish faith, it means something significant, right?
It's 4 Hebrew letters, Yud, He, Vav, He, pronounced often as Yahweh. It would be, if I were to transliterate it into English, it would be Y, H, V or W, Y, okay? So, or H, sorry. So YHWH, YHVH.
Okay.
This is an abbreviation for the lost 13-letter name for God that was known only by the high priest and spoken by him only on the holiest of holy days, Yom Kippur, in the Holy of Holies, in the temple in Jerusalem.
Wow.
The temple was destroyed for the second time in the year 70 by the Romans. The priesthood ceased to exist functionally, and the name was lost.
Wow.
The word was lost. And so this is an approximation of that name. There are multiple names for God, by the way, in the Bible. We know that. So, the biological, this idea of the new is something biology. So we tend to think of evolution as a constantly ascending line, right? We're always evolving. It's actually not. Many biologists don't think that's true. Okay. They believe in something called punctuated equilibrium. So we plateau, and then something punctuates the equilibrium. Something disrupts the equilibrium, and life changes and then plateaus again.
Interesting.
Right? An asteroid, for example, changes the climate on Earth, and it's a punctuation, and certain species disappear and certain species thrive.
Right.
right?
They call
So,
that, by the way, shocks in economics terms,
yeah,
like a shock to the system. And we
right.
think of it because, in small ways, but you're talking about, thousands, millions of years.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that now COVID is by no means the first plague. You can go back to discussions 2,000 years ago in the Talmud about what to do about a plague. You can go back to the Bible for plagues. We're not making history here.
Right.
However, the idea of a global pandemic,
right,
and a global scientific community that could come together through things like Zoom and the internet. The internet, I would say, punctuated the equilibrium. I really believe that. We have become one world in a way. As fractious as we see the world is, we've also never been more connected.
Right.
And more united.
Right.
That's another duality.
Yeah.
That, if you were to ask me what my book is about, it's really not about how death makes life meaningful. It's about, it is on the surface, but what it's really about are these dualities of love and grief.
Oh, nice.
Right? There's a duality there. The greater the love, the greater the grief. There's a duality to memory. My father had Alzheimer's for 10 years before he died.
Sorry.
Thank you. And, rabbis, clergy, we're all full of these platitudes about memory. May his memory be a blessing. She'll live on in your memories. Okay. All right. Yes, memory is beautiful. And it really, really hurts. It's both.
Wow.
In the book, I say it's like being caressed and spat on at the same time. That's the truth of memory. There's a duality.
Right.
With my father's death, and in the book I explore this, there was a duality of Steve Leder, the rabbi, and Steve Leder, the son.
Yeah.
And that journey, and it's never a journey from point A to point B. It's a tension. It's a journey back and forth and back and forth and back.
I like that analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
Most journeys of the humankind, right, are a high wire act between these dualities. The world doesn't have good people and bad people.
Right. It's just labels. Yep.
Good and evil is a line that runs down the middle of all of us.
Yep.
And we're constantly in a tug of war, trying to be on one side or the other of that line, right? So the book is about the duality of loss. This idea of loss revealing beauty, but it's still loss.
Yeah.
And
it still hurts.
It still hurts. And all of these, and the duality of the physical and the spiritual, or the body and the soul. That's another duality, right?
Right.
And just to give you an example of how a fear can become a friend, in a way. So I'm 61 years old. And
hey, we're the same age.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm a little older than you, and you can tell from the gray in my little beard.
Well, I just shaved. That's all. That's all. So the backstory of this is that my father and I physically have been almost identical our whole lives. In other words, if you saw a picture of my dad when he was 10 and a picture of me at 10, you probably couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
So I'm 61, and I look in the mirror now, I see my father. His face at 61. These bags, these are my dad. My wife says, you should get rid of those. I said, no, they're my dad.
Wow.
I don't want to get rid of them.
Wow.
And so what happened with my father's death? Now, keep in mind, I'd been a rabbi for about 31 years before my father died. And as you know, I have an enormous congregation, 2,700 families. It's huge, right? And so I had literally...
I think also one of the most world-renowned in its impact. I mean, you all make such an impact on the world.
Yeah, it's it's a lot.
Yeah.
As they say in the South, it's a handful. So, um, I had been a rabbi for 31 years before my father died, and I had literally buried more than 1,000 people.
Wow.
No hyperbole. Excuse me. So I had buried, by the point my father died, 1,000 people. My father dies. I fly home to Minneapolis for the funeral. We're sitting in a room at the synagogue. The way they do it there is the funeral is in the synagogue, and then you drive to the cemetery and do the burial.
Okay.
So we're sitting in this room at the synagogue. My father's body and casket are in the sanctuary. We're there early. And in Jewish funerals, the caskets are closed, but you're allowed to view before.
Okay.
The young rabbi walks in the room, and I think to myself, I know exactly how this young rabbi feels, but I have no idea how I feel.
Wow.
Because I was the son. He walks us into the sanctuary. I approach my father's casket. Now, John, I had stood next to 1,000 families at this point in my life while they were looking at their loved one in a casket. And to be honest with you, it didn't affect me very much.
Right.
I mean, I could have eaten a sandwich. I was doing my job and I was there to support them, but it wasn't my loved one, you know.
Right.
I approached my father's casket. This is still kind of hard for me to talk about. I approached my dad's casket. I look down. I put my hand on his chest. And I look at him, his body, and I think to myself, this is exactly what I'm going to look like when I'm dead. And my son is bending over my casket. I am going to die. Despite all the experience I'd had with the dying and the grieving and the burials, it wasn't until that moment that I really realized I am going to die. And that realization changed my life for the better, despite the pain of it.
Well, that's what's going through my mind right now. And maybe, and thank you for sharing from your heart, is how did it change you? What changed?
I take my time more seriously. I value my time. You know, I'm a giver. I run toward a fire. I've always been that way. I take care of people. I look at my time differently now. It's more precious to me now.
Yeah.
I say no more often because I've learned behind every no is a yes. Every time you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something else.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah, beautiful.
I treat money differently. You know, I grew up, you'll see in the book, my father was an extremely frugal person. I mean, he reused his dental floss, just to give you one example. I'm serious, because you know,
I've never heard of that before.
I swear, John, I swear on the Bible, he reused his dental floss because it was a perfectly good piece, right? Okay, that's just one example. There are many. Okay.
Oh, that's perfect.
So I grew up with a tremendous fear of poverty, and you know, insecurity and disaster looming around every corner. And after that realization, I realized, you know, I have ambitions beyond being a rabbi. I need to figure out when I'm going to retire. I need to retire. I'm going to buy those 10 acres in the desert and not worry about the money. And I'm going to build that little cabin. And I wouldn't have done that while my father was alive, because time to me seemed less finite. Even though intellectually I knew, of course we all do, but I didn't live like I knew it.
Right.
Now I live like I know it. And it's made me a better rabbi, a better husband, a better father, a better human being. I deliberately choreograph memories for my children now.
Oh, give me an example. Like, what do you mean choreograph a memory?
I will deliberately plan to do things with them to create beautiful memories in them
Oh,
later when I'm gone.
that's great.
Right? Deliberate. I curate
Yeah.
now experiences. Of course, we spend time just hanging out doing nothing, but let's go to the Arctic Circle and go fishing. Right? And I will turn to my kids and say, I hope you always remember this moment.
Oh, wow. Planting a seed.
And you know what else I do? It's very interesting. I never did this before. So again, it's a big congregation. So we have a lot of these 13-year-old kids having bar and bat mitzvahs, about 200 a year.
Wow.
And I'll tell you something I've started doing on the pulpit. After the kid is done with everything he or she has to do and all the pressure's off.
Yeah, yeah.
I stand with them before the ark, this where we keep the sacred scrolls of the Torah.
Yes.
And I ask them to pause for a minute. I'll give you the speech like you're the 13-year-old, okay?
Great.
I'll say,
Hey, by the way, I act like
yeah,
a lot. That's what my wife tells me. But yeah.
I'll say, John, I want you to do something now that might make you feel a little uncomfortable, but I think it's going to be very important for you later in life. I had my bar mitzvah in 1973. I have no memory of what my parents looked like at my bar mitzvah.
Oh.
I didn't take the time to really see them. And we didn't have a photographer, and we don't have pictures. So I want you to look at your dad right now. I want you to really look at him. Look at his eyes. See him. And plant that image in your mind so you have it for the rest of your life.
Beautiful.
And now I want you to look at your mom.
Yeah.
And really see her. And plant that image in. And then, John, when you're at war within yourself and you don't know the right path, just remember those faces and do what would make them proud. I never would have said that to a kid until my father died.
Wow. Yeah, the depth of, I guess, impermanence, right? The understanding of impermanence allows you to make better choices while we have them, right?
Yes, that's the beauty of what remains.
Wow. I can't wait to read your book. I've got a couple questions. Two things first that hit me was, I experienced both my parents' deaths, and they actually were beautiful things. I mean, it's hard to go through them, but they were beautiful at that moment. And I remember from my mom, she very spiritual, very loving. Just, what I think about is, what Jesus's mom might've been like. I just picture my mom's face. So this idea of picturing your parents' face gives me love, right? And anyhow, when she passed, I was with her. It was just me, her and I. She was in the kitchen. She had a massive heart attack, and so I try to do CPR. I get 911 going, all that, and I've been trained in CPR, so I'm doing that. And all of a sudden, what's very interesting to me, and as a rabbi, I'd like your thoughts on this, is I felt this energy leave her body, and it was very, very distinct. I mean, it went up. And I'm looking into her eyes. And here's what's very interesting, because she's grasping for air, from the physical standpoint, right? But I'm looking in her eyes and deeply, and she's staring off. And I couldn't decide, Steve, did I see fear or did I see awe? And as I'm looking in her eyes, I realize, no, what I'm seeing is awe. She is seeing awe. And then that energy left her body. And then I'm not kidding you, within the nanosecond, I no longer was looking at my mom. It was flesh and blood, but there was something different.
Yes.
Now, what did I experience there?
What you experienced is, in fancy words, the transmigration of the soul. So, as I said, I've looked at 1,000 dead bodies, right? And any of us who've seen a dead body of someone we love, it's so obvious that is not the person.
Right.
There is so much more to us than our corporeal being, right? Yes. And in simple religious terms, it's a body and a soul. It's another duality, right?
Yep.
And the body clearly dies. The body is a vessel. But even from a scientific perspective, energy never dies. It transforms
Right.
itself, right? So
Beautiful.
even the non-believer will accept that.
Yep.
That energy is transformed. It's not dead. And I deeply believe in this idea of the transmigration of the soul, that our soul separates from the body dies, and the soul does not. Where does it go? I don't know. I have to die to find out.
Oh, damn. I was going to ask. That was my next question. Where does
Look,
it go?
nobody can answer that question with credibility. No
Right.
one, because you have to be dead to know.
Wow.
Right? Maybe it just returns to wherever it was before we were born, and we have no knowledge of that either. Where were you before you were born, John? You don't know.
Right.
You don't spend any time thinking about it.
No.
It might be like that, or it might be something else. I can tell you two things in addition to that very powerful story you told about your mom that I think it demonstrates. One of the things in the book that almost every podcaster and talk show host and journalist and critic have asked me about is my claim that in over 1,000 experiences of being with the dying, I mean people who are actively dying,
Right.
minutes or hours, not one time has that person been afraid.
Wow.
Not once. And I ask, John, are you afraid? Now they have fears for other people. They might be afraid their, their spouse isn't going to be okay, or the kids aren't going to be okay, but not once. And I accept that my evidence is anecdotal, but it's not.
Wow.
It's not insignificant. 1,000 people are a lot of people.
Powerful.
Not one person has said, "I'm terrified." Never, because there is a kind of peace that comes. There is a point at which death comes as a kind of peaceful friend.
Right.
And that's what you, I believe, saw in your mother's eyes. That wasn't fear. That was peace descending over her, embracing her. That was her soul embracing peace. And I wouldn't be saying this if I saw this 1 out of 10 times. I'm telling you 1,000 out of 1,000 times. And now, of course, we get to this question. Okay, now what about the afterlife, Rabbi? Right? All I can tell you is that I have just heard too many stories from people I respect, rational, intelligent people I respect. And I have had too many experience of my own with discovering my father over and over again, now even though his body is dead, to dismiss the idea that somehow a connection remains. Now, a cynic might say, well, that's just your projection. There was always a ladybug every day in your backyard. You're just seeing it on your dad's birthday every year. It's a projection. To which I say, so what?
Okay.
It's real. It's my projection. That's like saying, oh, John, that was just a dream. It was real. It happened in my mind. What do you mean just? It was a dream, and dreams are real. Are they projections? Yeah, but so what? I hear a Hank Williams song, I think of my dad.
Wow.
You start singing You Are My Sunshine, I have to pull off the road and cry.
Wow.
Every time I leave a room, I turn off the lights. That's my dad. Because, we don't work for the electric company. Right? Right?
Exactly.
Right? So, to me, these are very real experiences. And frankly, this is another thing about memory and the duality of it. And time, and the duality of time, is that time and memory have also helped me to round the sharp edges of my father's life. Because he was a tough, scary guy.
Right.
When we were little kids, he would say things like, I don't want to have to hit you because when I hit, I break bones.
Wow. My dad used to say, get with the program. And if he said, get with the program, you knew it was time to straighten up.
Yeah. But who says that to a kid if I hit
Exactly.
break bones,
Right. Right.
you know? So there were sharp edges,
Sure.
and they're softer now. They're rounder. And
Yeah.
and also Alzheimer's did that, you know?
Oh, I bet.
As
Mm.
bad as it is, my father and I learned a new language because of Alzheimer's,
Oh, that's beautiful. You
which
know,
was,
you just helped me a lot because my assistant, her name's Magic, by the way, Michelle, we call her Magic. Her mom's going through that right now. I know she's going home to cook dinner, and now I'll be able to share this with
well,
her because that's beautiful.
so I learned a new language. My father and I learned a new language together as a
Mm.
result of his Alzheimer's, which was the language of touch.
Oh, nice.
I didn't walk and hold my father's hand, you know, as you know, maybe I did when I was tiny, but
Right.
you know, there were five of us kids and he worked all the time. And I would sit in the nursing home for hours silently because my father stopped speaking, just holding my dad's hand.
Beautiful.
And it was beautiful. So I would say to, you know, Magic, don't underestimate the power of touch.
Wow. Well, we talked about the hug earlier,
Yes,
right? And
it's
and that touch. Hey,
language.
I got a couple questions here. I want to dive in. My question was not what's the afterlife. My question to you was going to be, so if this experience of death becomes, you become fearless or you no longer have fear, how can we use that to live our current life? Kind of what you're doing, right?
Great question. Yeah, it's a great question. Well, okay, so I'm going to give you a counterintuitive way that is, I think, really helpful. Okay,
Yeah.
if in fact, when people are actively dying, it is a feeling of peace. That means if you are anxious about dying, it's not your day. Okay, anxiety is for the living,
Okay.
right? So if you wake up tomorrow, John, and you're suddenly like, God, I just don't want to die. I don't want to die. It's not your day, man.
That's
And by
good.
the way, could you get hit by a train?
Sure.
Yeah, but then
Whatever.
you're not anxious about that, right?
Right.
So the days that you are anxious about dying, it's not your day. Because here's the closest analogy I can give you. And as a pilot, you would understand this better than most. Think back to the time you were suffering from the worst jet lag in your entire life. Like you were just lead, okay?
Yep.
All you want to do is get to that hotel room
Get to sleep.
and pull those covers over your head and go to sleep. You're
Yeah.
not anxious about sleeping. You're not nervous about it. You're not depressed about it. It's the most natural. It's what your body needs to do.
Got it.
That's death.
Huh. Yeah. Beautiful. And it is a process. You know, one thing I'm thinking about here is, if I could push that boundary from whatever it's minutes or hours, where you've experienced it, I'm sure differently with different people. But if I could push that boundary of peace, non-anxiety, right, to like even 24 hours, how about a week? How about a month? How about a year? Remember that country music song, Live Like You're Dying? It's very similar to what we're talking
Yeah.
about here.
Yeah.
Do you have any tools that
Yeah.
we can share? Just
Well,
pushing that boundary a little bit?
I have some maybe advice more than tools.
Beautiful.
All right. So first of all, the denial of death is an important part of living too. Not just the acceptance of death, but the denial of death. If you're in your 30s and 40s and ambitious and building and creating, you have to push death to the background. You have to. And you should. Right?
Yep.
So I would say, first of all, don't worry that you're not thinking about death. Like there's a time in life for that, and there's a time in life to deny it.
Beautiful.
Secondly, and this is the good news and the bad news, people face death exactly the way they face life.
Oh, beautiful.
It doesn't give anyone a new personality. It doesn't give any family a new dynamic. Okay. John, you are an optimistic, thoughtful, energetic guy, right? You have a deep curiosity. I can already see that and feel that in you, like you have an enthusiasm for life. You're going to approach your death exactly the way you approach your life.
Beautiful. That gives me hope, by the way. Thank you.
Right. In your case, that's good news.
Yeah.
But if you are a person who is always the victim, or a person who's never at peace with his or her circumstances, you're not gonna be at peace a month out with your death. You're just not. It's going to take the biology of it to bring you there. I often have to say to people like, Steve, will you talk to my mom? She's going to be dead in 3 months and she's acting like it's not happening and she's in denial, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, has your mom generally lived in denial of difficult things? Oh, absolutely. She never wanted to talk. I said, so let her be, because I'll tell you something. First of all, you're not going to give her a new personality.
Right.
There's this joke about the Jews. Heinrich Heine is this German poet. He had this joke about the Jews. He said, the Jews are like everyone else, just more so. Which I love, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So the death just makes everyone more so.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but there is a point where the disease is in charge, regardless of your personality.
Yeah.
And the disease becomes the teacher and the guide. And it prepares everyone, including the dying. But can I change your personality 3 months out? Because no, nor should I. And this is just an important thing to be aware of, that death makes everyone and everything more so. If you have a beautiful, loving family, juicy, funny, great family in life, you're going to have this great, juicy, funny, beautiful family in death.
Yeah.
If you have a bickering, dysfunctional, petty family in life, you're going to have a bitter, petty, dysfunctional family in death. They'll behave at the funeral, right? but I mean, in the limo ride home, it's going to start up again,
Okay. Yeah, I got you. Hey, a couple of questions I wanted, and this goes back to Moses talking to God, right? And I love Moses, at least my impression of this is that, they're having a conversation and Moses says, well, who should I say sent me? Right. Yeah. This classic. And God says, I am, right. Well, tell me, I am.
It's a hard thing to translate.
Oh, please go.
It could mean, and I think the translation is, I will be what I will be.
Oh, okay.
It's future tense. Asher. I will be what I will be.
And so where did the I am statement come from? I am.
Many places in the Bible, God says, Ani Adonai, I am God.
Okay.
Okay. I am God, not I am God, right? By the way, an important point about that is that also means God is saying, and you are not God.
So that's the duality.
Right? When the Bible says I am God, it is simultaneously saying, and you are not God, which is basically what God says to Job when Job wants to understand evil. God says, are you big? I am. You'll never understand cosmic justice. It's different than earthly justice. You're only human. But the exact phrase you're referring to in Hebrew is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I will be what I will be.
What I will be. Okay, beautiful. That helped me a lot. Now, here's the question though, because I believe what you put after an I am, so God said, I am God. It's real important how you define yourself. This is for ourselves, I am blank, right? Some people say I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a rabbi, whatever. But I find that, and I've thought about this a lot, that what is the I am statement that I define myself by. And I actually teach this. It's kind of fun to get people to think about, well, what words do I choose after I am? You know? And I don't know, have you thought about that?
You think about it a lot. Yeah.
Well, so what is your I am? What do you put out?
Let's go back to death for a moment, because as I said, it's the great teacher.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time in cemeteries.
Mm.
And I am always, every time, struck by the fact that despite the fact that we are all unique individuals and we lead unique lives, grave markers, headstones, they almost all say exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Because when you have to define a person's life in 4 lines with 15 characters per line, which is what they give you, you are engaged in a real exercise of essentialism.
Beautiful.
It's the stripping away we talked about, and the beauty of what remains. And what do they all say? Now there are outliers, of course. There are some funny ones, and but 98% of them all say the same thing. What? Loving husband, father, grandfather, friend. Loving wife, mother, grandmother, friend. All of them.
Yeah.
That's who we are. Now we lose sight of that sometimes. But that's who we are. Who am I? I'm Leonard's son. I'm Barbara's son. I'm Marilyn, Sherry, and Joanne, and Greg's brother. I'm Betsy's husband. I'm Aaron's dad. I'm Hannah's dad. And the rest is commentary. The rest is a footnote. And I love what I do, and I think it's important, and I think I help people and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But is that who I am?
Right.
No. Do I always live in alignment with what I just said? Also, no.
Right. As best you can, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I would have to say, I am not is also an important sentence. If I've never seen one of your talks, but you might want to consider adding that, because this idea we were talking about of negative space. Okay,
right.
Who are you not?
That's
right?
Good.
Right? I am not the Messiah. I can't save and rescue everyone, right? Or I am not the perfect father. I'm a good enough father. I am not. Whatever is also important.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say to me, like, someone asked me on a podcast, we were talking about the book of Job, which is my favorite, most important book in the Bible, I believe.
I was going to say, for it to be your favorite,
it's the most important.
I was going to say, as a kid, I pick up the book and I had no idea where to start. And the classic is just open it up, right? Yeah. It opens to Job, right? And I start reading that. And I'm a young kid, so I don't understand it at your level. And after a while, I'm like going, holy crap, is there anything good going to happen here? But tell me more about the book of Job. This is powerful.
All right. So first of all, Job is the first book in the Bible that says right up front, innocent people suffer for reasons not of their own doing.
Okay.
Because what's the first sentence? Job is a blameless man. He's done nothing wrong. Because the prior biblical view is you suffer because you sinned.
Right.
Here, there's no victim blaming.
Beautiful.
Number 2, Job is not a Jew. Job is an everyman. Yeah. Okay. Job is all of us. We are all Job.
Yeah.
Next, let's talk about the story quickly for your readers, okay?
Yeah, please.
All right. So Job is this blameless, good guy, and God is bragging to Satan, the antagonist, about his faithful servant Job. And the antagonist says, well, yeah, sure, he's faithful. He has a great life. Make him suffer. He'll turn on you in a second. So God takes the bet and makes Job suffer. He loses his family. They all die. He loses his health. He loses his business. He loses it all. and his friends come to visit him. 3 friends come to visit him, and they say to him, I'm paraphrasing, obviously,
Yes.
you must have been bad.
Right.
Because that's the old view. You must have been bad. And Job says, no, I haven't. On the contrary, I've been good. I've been faithful. And they say, well, you're not being honest. And Job finally, because he knows he's innocent, he essentially puts God on the witness stand and says, God, I'm one of the good guys. Why me?
Right.
Does God defend himself? No. God essentially says to Job, are you big? I am. Do you keep the ocean in its shores? Do you make the sun rise and set? Did you scatter the stars in the sky? Did you fill Leviathan's nostrils with harpoons? Try it. And then God says, I make it rain where no man lives. Which is God saying, you are not the center of existence, my friend. I make it rain where there are no people. Who are you, with your puny powers of human reason, to expect God to be just, to expect the cosmos to be just the way in which the world, the earth, is just? You're only human. You'll never understand it. To which Job says, I hear thee. In other words, he accepts God as the mystery beyond human understanding. Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I will be what I will be.
What I will be.
And Job renounces his human judgment in the face of this mystery that is God.
Wow.
Now, would I ever say, John, to the parents of a 2-year-old who's died of leukemia, look, John, I know this hurts, but you have to have faith. This is all part of God's great plan for the universe, but we'll never understand it. I don't say that.
Right.
However, the older I get, the more I appreciate how small we really are.
Wow.
You know, I was going to say to you, we were talking about Job on this podcast a few weeks ago, and someone asked me this question like, well, what do you know about the afterlife? And I said, nothing.
Right.
I'm not big. I'm small.
Yeah. Wow.
So whatever word you want to use, you don't have to use the word God, but clearly there is a power at work in the cosmos beyond any human force or understanding. I think we can all accept that.
Yeah. Powerful.
There's no human that makes the sun rise. So I don't care if you call it God or nature or science. It doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter if you call this an iPhone or a cell phone or a communication device or a handheld computer. I don't care what you call it. It doesn't matter. We all know, to paraphrase, I will be what I will be. We all know it is what it is.
Yeah. Wow. I can see how deep your book is and how using the death and the challenges as blessings, and the tools. So I can't wait to dive in. I want to wrap the podcast though on a little bit of a different tint. I got a couple questions here and I'm going to end on gratitude. So I'm just planting that seed. I want to know how gratitude really helps people. But before I get there, I just got to take this advantage is that this idea of different belief systems, different faiths, what is more similar? What can we all hold on to? Like you talked about science versus God as the same. What can we hold on to where we're not talking about our differences and trying to be separate from somebody else, but we're really talking about how to all love one another. How do you approach that? What do you say to people?
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of the evil and danger of objectification.
Beautiful. Okay.
Do not objectify other people. If you prick them, they bleed.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what Shylock says, if you prick us, do we not bleed?
Wow.
We're all human, and we're all only human. Some empathy and humility would be in order.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
And in terms of gratitude, to me, that is the definition of the religious ethos. Is gratitude.
Oh, nice.
It's gratitude, and I mean it in this sense. If you were to ask me what does it mean to be a spiritual person, first of all, the word spirituality has been so overused, it's lost its currency. What I mean when I talk about spirituality, being a spiritual person, is the sanctification of the mundane. My first book that I wrote 25 years ago, and they're reissuing it. The very first book I ever wrote was called The Extraordinary Nature of Ordinary Things.
Yeah. So,
in other words, this mentality, this worldview that there's no such thing as a small blessing. If it's a blessing, it's enormous.
Huge.
And I was asked on a news program yesterday, how do we approach gratitude around our Thanksgiving table this year? I said, don't start with the big things.
Right.
First of all, don't stop till you get to 100 of them.
Oh, nice.
Keep going around that table, because usually it's let's all say something we're thankful. I'm thankful we're all together. I'm thankful for my family. Right? Okay, fine. Don't stop going around the table till you reach 100. A traditional Jew says no fewer than 100 blessings a day.
Wow, I love it.
Yes. Now, it's why do we have a blessing over bread? The simplest of foods. Because if you can be grateful for bread,
right,
you can be grateful for white truffles, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Hey, real quick, Steve. I was just with the University of Georgia basketball team, and at the end, I gave them a talk. And at the end of it, I always do what I call a glad to be or share out. I just say, hey, let's stand up. We're talking about the dining room table, and say, what are you grateful for? But you gotta, these are tough kids, right?
Yeah.
And it was so cool to see that humility, that empathy as they break down and start to say, the usual stuff. And then it just takes one person to be open and honest, right?
Yep.
And it's just the floodgates open up. I'm grateful that drinkable water pours out of my tap. Yes.
Do you know how many people in the world can't say that?
Wow. How many? It's like a
billion.
Third? Yeah, billions. A third of the population.
Billions. 70% of people in the world, the dwelling they call home has one room.
Jeez.
70%. Half the world lives on $10 a day or less. Half the world, John.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for a piece of bread. I'm grateful for the water coming out of my tap. I'm grateful I drew breath this morning.
Yes.
There's even a Jewish prayer that we say after we go to the bathroom that is an expression of gratitude that our openings open and our closings close, which sounds really funny until
it's
you have
powerful.
An opening that doesn't open or a closing that doesn't close, and you're dead. Because that's called an embolism or a stroke or a heart attack, and you're dead. Okay, so you're going to eat a strawberry, there's a blessing for that. You're going to eat a raisin, there's a blessing for that. You see the sunrise, there's a blessing for that. You see a friend, there's a blessing for that, right? So, look, it's not a cure for depression, but it's a counterbalance.
Oh, I like that.
Right? To depression. If you're grateful, it really helps. And I would say grateful for the smallest of things.
Yes.
Right? Because I think that's the difference between a spiritual orientation to life versus a sense of ennui or entitlement.
Entitlement, yeah, totally. Wow. That's such a beautiful, beautiful thought, especially with Thanksgiving come around the corner. And
100 times, you got to get to 100.
Okay.
And that's going to force you.
Yeah.
Start looking at tiny, beautiful things.
Little things. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'll share with you two quick things that I do when I get out of bed every morning. And I was taught this by a beautiful teacher. They have my left foot hit the floor first because it's awkward. But when it hits, to think like your first book, today's not normal. Today's magical. And I've trained my brain to not take for granted all the things we're talking about. This is magic, like right here, just having the time. And by the way, I want to thank you because you talked about how precious time is for you now. And to take this precious amount of time with myself and our listeners shows me how much you care, you know, about others and making a difference. So
I do. And it's part of what gives my life meaning,
yeah.
and yours, you know. You've given an awful lot of time to this effort too. And, you know, I appreciate that. And you're the first guy I've ever met who has two people working for him, one named Magic and the other Sugar. So, you know.
Now we're talking. Yeah. And with your team, you know, you're leader now. You always are. But call signs are great, by the way.
Is that my call sign now, leader?
Yeah, leader.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah. And then the depth of having that. The last question I have before just saying thank you again is I've often wondered this. This has been a deep question for me a lot, and that is, can you teach wisdom without going through pain? Can we learn wisdom?
It's such a good question. I want to write a book called How to Have Your Second Baby First, right? Right, but you can't.
Okay, that's the answer.
It's a great title, but you can't write that book. So let me tell you how. I'm going to give you what I think is a great answer.
Please.
I have asked that same question in my life. Many years ago, I started a men's group, and I took 100 guys into the group every year, and we met 12 times, once a month, and we had dinner and discussed a topic with a facilitator. So one of the things we did one time was something called an age wheel, where the youngest guy, there were 3 generations in the group, 20s to 80s.
Beautiful.
So the youngest guy stands here, the next youngest next to him, shoulder to shoulder, all the way around the room in a circle. And then you get to ask questions of the men opposite you in the circle. So the 30-year-olds are asking the 60-year-olds questions. The 60-year-olds are asking the 30-year-olds question. I was in my early 30s at the time. I asked the guys across from me in the circle, who are now my age, who were then my age now, in their 60s. I looked at these guys and I said, listen, I've only been a rabbi for a few years, but it's already clear to me that the men I know who are most at peace with themselves and with their lives are in their 60s and 70s.
Wow.
Is there anything you guys can, on that side of the circle, can tell us guys over here about how to achieve that without having to live all the years it takes to get to stand where you're standing? And 20 guys go like this. Nope.
Wow.
They just shook their head. Nope.
Well, since that we're both in our 60s, I'm 62. It gives me a little bit of hope that you know, we've got experiences. And
and you can have a field guide that can help you understand where you are, but a field guide doesn't really take you all the way around that circle. This is why, like, you know, this book about death, I think is helpful because it's a field guide. Like, okay, here's where you are. Here's what you're facing. Here are some things that'll be helpful. But until you're in that situation, it won't resonate.
Wow. Okay. So I want to make sure everybody knows we're going to be putting the show notes together. We'll put the book there. I want to just really stress how meaningful this has been for me. The beauty of what remains, how our greatest fear becomes our greatest gift. Where can people get this? Where's the best place for them to go?
Their local bookstore or Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon's always easy, and all my books are there. This is the most recent. The next one's coming out in June, and it's called For You When I Am Gone, and it's about how to leave a legacy letter or ethical will for your loved ones.
Oh, I got to get that one too.
Yeah, you can't
what's
get
the title?
Yet. For You When I Am Gone.
for you when I am gone. Oh, perfect. And I want your first book, by the way, too. I'm getting all three. Okay. So
Well, there are 5, so it's going to be expensive,
okay.
John.
I love that.
Do the Kindle, it's cheaper.
Okay, I got you. Hey, I like to end with an ask, and that is, can you leave not only myself but everybody who's listening to this with a blessing? I would just
Sure. God of the lonely and the lost, God of the strong, God of the weak, God of the young, God of the old, God of those who have no God, our God. Bless us all with the deep truth that we are one, and give us the strength to live that truth. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Thank you, Rabbi. What a blessing.
It's my honor. Really an honor to be with you, John.
Hey, thank you. I know there's so many people that you can spend your time with. I'm so grateful and honored for this.
You're a special guy. I hope our paths cross IRL. You know what that means?
No.
That's the millennials taught me that. IRL means in real life.
I hope they do cross. I'm going to make an effort to come and see you.
Come visit me in California.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you again, John Sugar. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Bye-bye.